I believe that PTSD is a psychological injury, and I'm going to share with you some of the evidence that supports this idea. Scientists have been able to capture and identify three main areas that are different in people who have PTSD. Scientists have taken thousands of neuroimagery scans, such as MRIs and CTs, and have found that the three structures differ in size and activity when compared to people who do not suffer the condition. We can now be assured that psychological trauma can physically change the brain. The three main areas that I want to talk about are the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the premedial frontal cortex. Let's have a closer look at these structures and talk about the findings. We can do this by using this app that I found that shows a 3D model of the brain. Neuroimagery studies have shown that people with PTSD have an increased activity in their amygdala. This is both at a state of rest and when exposed to triggers. So what does the amygdala do? The amygdala is a small and complex structure that is located deep within the emotional brain. The amygdala is responsible for fear processing, and it kicks off the fight and flight response in the body. One of the hallmarks of PTSD is the physiological hyper-vigilance. We can now see that for people with PTSD, this results from an overactive amygdala. The amygdala is what increases their baseline hypervigilance and contributes to the symptoms that are associated with this cluster. The next structure is called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a structure in the brain that's most closely aligned with memory formation. The hippocampus is important in the role of conversion of a short-term memory to a long-term memory. There is damage that is clearly visible on neuroimagery scans of the hippocampus. Here we can see a reduction in the size of the hippocampus from a chronic PTSD sufferer compared to someone unaffected by the condition. During extreme stress as part of the fight and flight response, which we now know is triggered by the amygdala, the body releases high levels of adrenaline and cortisol. It has recently been observed that high levels of cortisol can kill and damage the cells of the hippocampus. This is one of the most convincing pieces of evidence that suggests that PTSD is an injury and that traumatic events can change the brain. The final part that has been identified is the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex is located in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Thought to have an important role in the higher functioning of the brain, it is a critical part of the executive center. We know that there is a decrease in activity which is visible on brain scans in people with PTSD. This relates back to the processing and disconnect between the emotional and executive centers of the brain. There is a growing body of evidence that supports PTSD as an injury more than it is a mental illness. Unlike any other psychiatric condition, you cannot get PTSD on its own. PTSD is always the result of an external trauma, which is not much different to any other physical injury in the body. Neuroimagery scans have shown physical changes to brain structures. This is similar to how an X-ray shows a fracture in a bone. What's more important than any of this is if we approach PTSD as an injury, it gives people a stable and concrete platform from which they can rehabilitate. I believe that this approach will help prevent people losing hope and committing suicide. I know it has certainly helped me. I hope very much you have enjoyed today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week.